and welcome to our Week 6 presentation. My name is Yue Tao, and today we will talk about the paper Flint Water Advisory Task Force Final Report, commissioned by the Office of Governor Rick Snyder, State of Michigan. It explains a series of regulations and systematic failure during the Flint Water Crisis, and what actions would we do to solve these problems. Furthermore, this presentation will not only summarize the topic of this paper, but also include some of the concepts mentioned in our lectures. Now let's talk about the basic information about this city. City Flint is located in Michigan, the United States of America. It has been facing a long-term economic crisis and systematic failure since the 21st century, which caused the city to lose over 20% of its population within 10 years. Of the remaining residents, approximately 57% are Black or African Americans. Poverty is also endemic in Flint, with 41.6% of the population living below federal poverty threshold. The median value of owner-occupied housing is roughly one-fifth of the national average. This basic situation gives a series of triggers for future environmental injustice. Move to the water crisis background. The Flint Water Crisis was a public health crisis that started in 2014 and ended in 2019. In order to mitigate the financial problem of City Flint, the local governor appointed 4 emergency managers to control the city's finance, during which time the city lost their political control to emergency managers, so they have complete authority and controls over municipal decisions, including changed water source from treated Detroit water and sewage department water to the Flint River, resulting in a $5 million saving in 2 years, but caused the drinking water of City Flint to be contaminated with bacteria and chemistry leaching contaminations from aged pipes that cause more health problems. The crisis has been accused to be a result of environmental racism. Although the word environmentalism were not mentioned in the paper, the facts below clearly indicate it is a result of discrimination. First, lead has more profound health effects in children because the exposure is distributed throughout the body's volume. Children's smaller body volume convey large risk from lead exposure. These effects are concentrated in brain cells, causing a reduction in intellectual functioning, academic performance, and problem-solving skills. According to the research of the United States of Michigan, 93% of young Flint residents are identified as Black, in which of the most affected population is young African American. Such event puts communities of color experience higher exposure to pollution than do non-minority groups and neglect the importance of the health issue of the low-income residents and residents with color. Now let's take a look at what are some major missed responsibilities resulting in this crisis. Under 4 major departments, the first, Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, took the primary responsibility for the water contamination in Flint. The Michigan Department of Environmental Quality did not require appropriate sampling of tap water quality as mandated. They dismissed express concerns of Flint residents, elected officials. They also failed to work with other departments to ensure that the appropriate and comprehensive public health response to repeated requests to address health concerns related to drinking water. They continued to insist the water was safe and met all federal requirements, and discouraged any statements that would imply that the water was not safe. Next to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Service, the lack of time analysis and understanding of its own data on childhood blood lead level prolonged the Flint water crisis. As mentioned earlier, the emergency manager have complete authority and control over municipal decisions. They also failed to apply either benefit cost or efficiency measuring before taking actions, put the residents' health of Flint in great risk. Last but not least, the governor's office continued to rely on incorrect information provided by those departments, despite uptrending evidence from outside experts and the mouths of citizens' complaints throughout the Flint water crisis. Moreover, the lack of communication between each department is also a major reason for delaying actions. I will now pass the presentation to Menghan to talk about further details.
Let's talk about issues presented by the Flint water crisis, the reality of environmental injustice, perspectives from Flint, Flint recovery, and statewide initiatives. Environmental justice has two fundamental principles. One is the fair, non-discriminatory treatment of all people. The other is the provision for meaningful public involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income. In environmental laws, regulations, and policies, as mentioned before, there were 57% African Americans. However, they do not enjoy the same degree of protection from other environmental and health protection as others. The standard to define whether the environmental is justice or not is not about intent. It is about process and results, fair treatment, equal protection, and meaningful participation in neutral forums that honor human dignity. From the facts, it is easy to see that this is a case of environmental injustice. The Flint Water Crisis has brought many bad effects. It is harmful to the human body and has a long-term impact on society, especially for the listed people. This toxicity can occur at any time in a person's life, and blood lead levels do not indicate peak lead exposures beyond a 30 to 35-day window. Documented risks of learning, behavioral, and cognitive problems are present for all potentially exposed children in Flint. The risk of kidney problems, hypertension, gout, and stillbirth may affect exposed adults in Flint over the coming years and decades. Overall, the damage that the Flint water crisis brings to people is bad and will have a lifelong impact on people. As Flint's people live in a dangerous environment, mitigation health services, public health infrastructure, and technicians must be provided. Flint's water system is damaged by corrosive water which must be renewed and repelled, and the high-risk LSL must be replaced first. At the same time, Michigan should bear the primary responsibility for funding mitigation measures and ensuring federal funding in accordance with the responsibilities of the state government through the coordinated efforts of emergency management personnel. Then the urgent problems caused by the uncertainty of Flint tap water safety could be solved. For the recovery, there are some solutions. Sustainably fund the Flint Water Interagency Coordinating Committee (FWICC), clarify and effectively communicate the roles and work of the FWICC and Mission Flint. Ensure 100% clinical and environmental follow-up with Flint families whose children have been found to have elevated blood lead levels since April 2014, and ensure that occurs in children's medical homes. Over all children listed in the recommended Flint toxic exposure registry, timely access to age-appropriate screening and clinically indicated follow-up. Consider establishing a dedicated subsidiary fund in the Michigan Health Endowment Fund to facilitate funding of health-related services for Flint, establishing a comprehensive Flint public health project on water pollution. This was helpful to Flint recovery and prevent possible crises in the future. For statewide initiatives, there are some suggestions. Conduct an investigative review of relevant departments. MDEQ and MDHHS cooperate to implement the school and nursery water quality testing project and effective reporting the test results. Develop an LSL alternative project model and a financing mechanism to fund the financing of private property. Revise and strengthen information issued by public water supply system on the impact of widespread use of lead in public and private pipelines. Promote local and national reinvestment in key water infrastructure, while providing mechanisms to improve affordability and universal access to water services. Establish a new cabinet-level post. Priority will be given to the health affairs of all national institutions, focusing on public health.
Now let's talk about the conclusion. Overall, the water pollution not only reflects the unfairness of the pollution exposure, but also reflects the unskilled responses to the crisis. This crisis contains government failure, intransigence, unpreparedness, delay in action, and environmental injustice. All of the relevant departments neglected the residents' health problems, did not provide the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards as that provided to other communities. It failed to apply either benefit cost nor efficiency measuring before taking actions. After the crisis, Flint solved the short-term problems by updating and repairing the water system, providing mitigation health services, public health infrastructure and the technicians, the review and the investigation of the relevant institution has solved the long-term problems to a certain extent. Through this crisis, the corresponding measures that the Flint did to solve the pollution and make an example for the next crisis and for the country, which can quickly deal with and solve the problem. So our first question is, why did you believe it was necessary to revisit the Flint event from an economical perspective? The city used to get its water from Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, but recognizing opportunities to save money by moving it to Clark-County Water Authority. The city estimated that switching to KWA would save them up to $200 million over the next 25 years, but they still needed to create a functional pipeline. Meanwhile, Flint's contract with DWSD expired in 2014, and the city needed to locate a replacement water supply in the meanwhile. The city opted to move its drinking water supply to the neighboring Flint River. The city received numerous complaints regarding the quality of the water it provided to its inhabitants throughout the next year. Multiple testing reveals significant amounts of lead and other harmful chemicals in the drinking water. To answer this question, we need to think about the economic impact of this Flint crisis and how to avoid the same crisis in the future. The second question is that what type of ethical issue is the Flint water crisis? The city of Flint has been touched by various causes that have harmed their quality of life and daily activities. Flint has been plagued by decades of financial distress and a wide range of socio-economic issues. About 43% of Flint residents were poor, 45% were renters, and only 11% had a high school diploma. And about 13% of the individuals under 65 lacked health insurance. In Flint, deteriorating homes and poor nutrition raised the risk of lead poisoning. Flint's drinking water was moved in 2014 from Detroit Water and the Sewerage Department's treated Lake Huron water to a new source, the Flint water, which lacked adequate water testing and treatment to avoid corrosion. In April 2014, just a few months after transferring a city's water supply from Lake Huron to the Flint River to save money, residents began to complain about the color, the taste, the peculiar odor of their drinking water. Physical changes were also a source of concern. Residents complained a sore on their bodies and illnesses. The city of Flint issued a health advisory letter to residents in response to these allegations, advising them to boil their water before drinking it. You may answer this question from three aspects: the ethical issues, the legal violation,
a decision-making framework.